Welcome to another edition of Two Irish Guys Discussing Software. Spring is in the air and we have cracking weather here in Ireland. Although it's getting a little bit cold today, the sun has been shining for the last 2 weeks. We've got a great episode. I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Brendan Walsh. Hello, Brendan.
Hello, Tomás. Yeah, a bit of a chill in the air, definitely.
It is, yeah. And we are going to be joined by Brad, because Brad Veech from Walmart. I'll introduce Brad now in a minute. But we're going to talk about how software will kill your budget. Brad has actually written a book on this called Software, the Silent Killer of Your Company's Budget. Brad's our kind of guy, actually. Remember we met him in 2019?
Yeah, instant hit. Yeah.
Instant hit in Denver, Colorado, the mile high city.
That wasn't such a big hit at the time. The joke.
We won't crack that joke
About
again.
50% of the audience thought that was funny.
Well, Brad did a cracking job. Brad is currently working for Walmart. He's the senior director of IT sourcing there, and he's worked with Best Buy, Medtronic, and he's really our kind of guy because he loves a bit of sarcasm. As you know, we like a bit of sarcasm on the show, don't we?
Yeah, and a salacious rumor or two just to throw in there, and backed up by a few allegedlys.
Yeah. We have to have a few of those along the way.
There'll be a lot of those today.
Oh dear. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Listen, before we start, let's not forget about the situation going on in Ukraine. Okay, this is a podcast, and we're not here to talk about politics, but our thoughts are again with the people of Ukraine. We ourselves are trying to do a little bit for them. We've made some donations to UNICEF, and we're trying to help out, figure out how we help out. See, can we even hire some of these guys that are coming? There's up to 200,000 potential refugees got to come into Ireland. So see, can we give them some jobs? But listen, stay tuned. We'll update people, and hopefully by the time we speak again, the thing may have calmed down. There's negotiations going on. So. Yep. Speaking of Europe, though, we might start there, actually, if it's okay with you, before we go jumping into our favorite vendors, because actually there's been quite a lot. There's been a major change in Europe. So Europe has brought out a new law, the Digital Markets Act. Okay, it's focused on the big players, big platforms. They're trying to create a kind of a fair marketplace for them. It'll only affect companies that are actually turn over 75 billion. Effectively, what it is it's forcing the gatekeepers like Google's and Apple's to actually allow other people to use their platforms. You might have seen stuff around Apple and the guys who make Fortnite. My son's a big Fortnite fan, Epic Games. They've been having a fight on this. Fortnite want to be able to allow their users to be able to pay them. And of course, Apple are saying you have to do it through the App Store. Through the App Store, actually. So actually, it's the first time they've done something like this. A big change. It's going to have big implications potentially. And the European Union are pretty excited about it. Marguerite Vestager, who pushed this, she says she wants to have a simple and fair marketplace in the digital world. So,
and I saw that she also said that, which I was a little bit surprised by maybe, but that they're not so concerned with the big cloud guys. It's really the service providers who are servicing subscribers maybe to search engines like WhatsApp and Messenger, but
yes, it's the platforms actually. They're focused on the platform. It's all about they're trying to identify who's been participating in this monopolistic behavior. So they're targeting those organizations, and you can see it where you have a particular phone from a particular vendor, Google. They're forcing you down the road of having using their Android operating systems, force you to use their products. Same with Apple, force you to use their products. You have to almost use iMessage or WhatsApp. I mean, there's many other kind of products out there that you could use, but people don't use them because they don't even get presented with them. The default is to actually use what the big vendors. So
the Safari browser on Apple.
Listen, it's the same sort of stuff we see in our business with, you buy one thing, you're forced to buy the other thing. You do your IBM ELA or your big Oracle enterprise license agreement or Microsoft, you got to buy all this other stuff.
We might talk about that in a little bit.
We'll have an expert on very shortly to talk about that. Another bit of news, actually, they were also busy. This is one that might have missed the headlines because the Digital Marketing Act got a lot of headlines about this. Okay. So there was, I don't know if you know this, back a couple of years ago, there's been this data transfer, data privacy challenges between the US and Europe. It all came up actually back in about 2013 when a guy called Max Schrems actually took a challenge against Facebook in the Irish courts here in Ireland. He was an Austrian activist, okay? It was connected with the kind of the Edward Snowden kind of spying kind of allegations and that whole area. But it was all about the transfer of data between Europe and US, okay? So actually for the last couple of years, there's been a lot of problems in that area. They've maintained the ability to be able to transfer data, but there's been no rules around this at all. So actually, they've come up with a thing called the EU-US Data Pact. All right. It looks like it's, according to Margrethe Vestager again, Ursula von der Leyen, I should say, she said that it will enable predictable and trustworthy data flows, balancing security and the right of privacy and data protection. Now, it's interesting to see, will this do that? Because people like Max Schrems are saying, actually, it's not really fixing things. Nothing's changed. Because the issue was data that was transferred from European citizens to the US actually could the US
there's no control.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And they're claiming that actually there's still no control. They've just created
a pact
around this.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. Now, we talked about Ukraine earlier. Obviously, President Joe Biden has just been in Europe. Coincidentally, this is the week it was all signed. So I don't know whether it was a bit of pressure. I mean, President Biden has been fantastic for what's been going on in Ukraine in terms of at least provide political support so far.
Yeah, but you got to get some business done as well while you're here.
Well, I think that's what's happened here. There's been a little bit of a squeeze on the Europeans, I suspect, to open this up. Meta, Facebook, did threaten to actually
pull out.
I know, it's crazy. I know. Yeah. Would they really? Do we honestly think they would do that?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't care.
Well, I don't even
use them. No,
I use WhatsApp actually.
I do. That's true. I do use WhatsApp. A lot. Yeah, that could be a problem.
But the thing is, actually, with the new
with the other thing, with the DMA,
with the digital markets, you can use anybody's messaging service. So actually,
maybe there's a better one out there.
But, there may be, or if there's not, there may well be.
Look at me. I just go for the default. I should just,
Well, you see, you're presented with the default. This is the thing. These organizations do this.
Sneaky.
They catch us out. We need new skills. We need new skills. Better negotiating skills. I wonder, was there somebody going to talk about that one? That's been happening in Europe. So Europe has been the place to be this for some many good reasons and many bad reasons for the last few weeks.
Yeah.
But
well, most of my stories aren't to do with Europe; they're to do with the US.
Great.
So the mega vendors that are US companies. So as is common, I kind of look at some of the results that are results roundup.
Who's got results? Who's been showing them?
Well, Oracle's got a nod end of annual year, which is May. So their end of Q3 was recently announced. So they're up a bit, 4% year on year. Big deal. 4%.
Really. Well, a big company, aren't they?
Yeah, I guess they're a big company, but their net income has declined by 54%. Right, so that's pretty dramatic. So profits being hurt by the drop in share price of two of their investments, a gene sequencing company called Oxford Nanopore and their ARM server chip maker called Ampere. So they are not performing so well, although Oracle kind of remain bullish. Yeah. But that's kind of interesting enough. But what I think is most interesting about this is that their stock price is down 12% year on year, and it's $20 since December 21. So they're about $83. Okay. And they were at 103.
Okay.
So that's
pretty hefty.
Pretty significant drop in their share price. Yeah. Now, I've listened to some commentaries that says, it's time to buy, that there's a good investment there. As you announced when Rome was on the last podcast, you talked about the acquisition of Cerner for $23 billion in cash. I'd say Cerner are glad to have got the cash and not the shares, considering they dropped by $20. So maybe they can help.
How can they reinvent themselves? Why can these companies reinvent? I mean, Oracle, Microsoft aside, the big enterprise technology companies, they really struggle to reinvent themselves, don't they?
Yeah, I guess it's hard to be really innovative and creative, right? Yeah. And then, it takes a lot of breaking down to see exactly, really what they're doing. So that's why they make these big acquisitions. They make big noise by spending big in healthcare and then making some noise there.
And how it's hard for them to get on, to be visible as a brand even, isn't it?
Well, they spend a huge amount on brand, right? I mean, they spend a lot of money on, stadiums and sponsoring Formula One race cars.
Yeah,
was that the prompt?
Yeah, that was the problem. There was somebody telling me a story about Max Verstappen,
and they've invested in what was Red Bull. Formula One is now Oracle Red Bull, so they've invested, or they've promised to invest 300 million in
the thing is,
5 years.
Which is going to be, this is what's going to happen. Everyone's still going to remember it as Red Bull.
Red Bull, yeah. I mean, it's a bit like when a stadium is Lansdowne Road.
Yeah.
But eventually, people start calling it the Aviva.
For how much did you say?
How much did they spend?
Yeah,
300 million.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, further 300 million. Red Bull will continue to use the Oracle cloud infrastructure. Okay. So they actually kind of bought it. Like we always see this when they invest in something. There's always it's like a client acquisition.
Larry just can't help himself. He just wants to be the sales guy. Did you hear Larry? Actually, to be fair, we talked about Ukraine earlier. Larry threw in 5 million into fundraising for Ukraine, which is
fair enough. Yeah,
which is pretty generous of him. Yeah. To be fair, I mean, I know 5 million is probably to him is like $5 to you or me, but
I think he's worth about 40 billion. But but look, it's at least he is donating, and while he's donating, he's still in talks with TikTok. Talking about
we won't talk about that. Let's
no, it's unbelievable. It just
let's move on. Let's move on.
But I just want to put something in context though, because their share price is down. But actually, I've looked at some of the other mega vendors that don't really have announcements, right now. But like SAP is down $20 since December. Microsoft is down $30, and Salesforce is down $40. Now increasing inflation.
And I saw Microsoft, for example, put up their pricing.
Well, they did, yeah. So so why do they put?
What's that telling us? Like they're putting up the pricing of their Office 365 and Microsoft 365 products. Okay, so what's that telling us? Does that mean their business is slowing down?
Well, it might do, yeah. I mean, that was announced in September 21 before things kind of got really hairy with interest rate hikes and inflation. And
I know there's inflation, but the inflation...
Yeah. I mean, this is up to 15% in some cases, right? So up to 15%, and then, an extra $4 per user per month, which is kind of hefty enough. But
I mean, the legislators are going after these guys. And, particularly their dominance of the overall spend across the market. Other industries have to get permission to change prices.
Regulated, energy providers.
So these guys could just change price. I mean, particularly with environments where inflation is such a political issue. I would see very soon you could have situations where these guys are going to be put under the cosh.
Yeah, well, it could be seen as being a bit cynical, right? So, like, obviously during the pandemic, people started shifting quickly to using, cloud platforms, Microsoft Teams, etc. And so now they've all jumped because they have to, and then we go, great, we have them all.
Turn up the volume.
300 million extra users. Let's jack up the price. So, a bit cynical there.
What else we got?
So, there were some other stories about Microsoft, as to why they might be putting up their prices. And this is related to a story of a former director of emerging markets in the Middle East and Africa. He's a whistleblower on the platform Lioness, which I think we've seen before. And he's basically saying there's just, corporate widespread corruption, particularly in that territory. There's money flowing out of the Business Investment Fund, which is supposed to fund, training and innovation and partner enablement. And he's spotting payments, for example, 40,000 payment to a former employee, so an employee who was no longer there, not a customer, not an active partner. But money moving into an account where he's involved as some kind of, consultant on a deal.
All right.
But I've done a lot of travel around the territory, and I'm not surprised. I mean, there's, $1 trillion is lost in bribes globally.
Yeah, it's a real tricky problem.
Yeah,
so
I mean, the brown envelope stuff of the 70s and 80s just hasn't gone away. But the payments are just much bigger, and they're very much easier to conceal. So you're not really going down with cash.
Yeah,
you're transferring money to people on the basis that they're a contractor or they're an advisor. It's very easy to do that, and it's typically involving government purchasing and kind of mid-level bureaucrats. It's
manipulating the market, though. That's the problem.
And it's.
I know in some countries it could be it's considered part of the way they do business.
It's like it's part of our culture or something. But it's taking money out of the.
I'm surprised at Microsoft doing that sort of stuff. To be honest with you,
Yeah, well, it's very hard to find bad news stories, but that one stood out.
And our friends
IBM. Yeah, well, I mean,
we have to talk about them.
Yeah, well, you talked a little bit about age discrimination last time.
Oh, yeah.
And
the dinosaurs,
the dinosaurs,
the dino babies,
the dino babies. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the documents that were previously under seal have now publicly surfaced, so they're freely available to look at. So there's kind of many slides and charts, and I haven't seen them myself, so I'm kind of reading that what they're describing is essentially a shift towards younger workers, so called EPs.
What's that?
And that's not an album, it's not extended play, it's early professionals.
Right.
Early professionals, yeah. So we have a few early professionals, like our podcast editor here in the office. But the documents describe hiring goals such as shifting the headcount mix towards a greater percentage of EPs. And
I believe Arvin Christian was involved in this, was he?
Well, it seems to be right up to the top, Funding an influx of EPs to correct seniority mix. So,
I wonder, does that mean that they have to all leave as well? Because he's hardly an EP.
Well, maybe he thinks he's adding more value than the other EPs, or the other more senior members. But that's fine by us, because we'll just take them on anyways to support IBM software stack. So, in other news, then. There's this ongoing justification, which you read in the news around, the purchase of Red Hat, the 34.
Would you call it ongoing justification? I call it obsession.
Obsession. Well, it was a $34 billion, obsession, and so why they're doing.
I'd love to know how much of that money they've got back.
Well, Red Hat. And
because it goes back to
performing. Well, it was a very highly
profitable.
profitable company, much better performing than IBM was at the time of the acquisition, as we know from previous podcasts. IBM's revenue was declining, quarter on quarter, and under Dini Rometty alone, they dropped 20% of the revenue, which is something like 24 billion, fell off. So they bought a good company, but it's really just showing that. To underpin their containerization strategy, they need Red Hat, they need OpenShift as they try and move their customers towards their cloud pack, that unwanted software that ends up, and I'm sure Brad can tell us, in some of these value settlements that they have. A value settlement means you settle because you might be using more software than you're supposed to. But as a result of the settlement, you get more software that you don't want, and that's called a cloud pack.
This is something we were just talking at the beginning.
So we'll talk about that. And then kind of ironically then, as they kind of continue to justify the 34 billion in OpenShift as part of their multi-cloud strategy, Kyndryl, which is a business they shed about 100 days ago, is not forming new, it's forming new cloud packs, or I should say cloud packs, not
PACTS.
Not pack, packs.
All right.
PACTS. Yeah. But not with IBM, with Amazon. So it's new. It's trifecta is with Amazon, VMware, and itself.
And why wouldn't you? Let's be honest.
Well, exactly.
It doesn't. It's not, it's not.
You're going to choose the leader.
It's not. It's not a massive surprise. So what does it tell you? It's really if your closest ally is choosing somebody else, it really makes the job very difficult. Imagine being the sales guy for those companies.
Not a good look. Yeah. But last but not least, then with IBM, so they are moving into a new premise in New York.
Yeah, they're moving away from Armonk.
No, that's still going to be their HQ, but they've got multiple centers of excellence and offices around New York. So they're kind of centralizing all that into one brand spanking new building, or renovated building on 1 Madison Avenue. Pretty historic building. And so there's a couple of reasons why they're doing that, according to the company who's selling them the lease. And one is that they're going to have a 34,000 square foot outdoor terrace.
34,000 square foot outdoor
on the 10th floor
in Madison Avenue, Manhattan.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, 34,000 square. I would love to go there. It sounds like it'll be lovely, but it's absolutely enormous.
Yeah,
that's crazy. I mean, who is paying for that? I have to. I am shocked.
We may know somebody
shocked. Well, listen, I think this is a good time to bring in a negotiator, somebody who knows how to save money, who understands the tactics far better than you or I would understand. He's a over 20-year veteran in the IT outsourcing business. He's working now with Walmart as a senior IT director of sourcing. He's been at Best Buy and Medtronic and other companies. As I mentioned earlier, he loves to be sarcastic like us, so he has a great sense of humor. He's in Bentonville, Arkansas. Brad Veech, welcome.
Welcome to you guys. It's a pleasure to join you.
It's great to see you on the screen. It's been 2.5 years, I think, since we met in Denver, Colorado, as Brendan said earlier. None of us really have been on the road much. I mean, I've started to travel a little bit myself in the last kind of 4 or 5 months, but I think you're going to be in it was ProcureCon, wasn't it? You were speaking at?
Correct. Yeah, I'm going to do the keynote again for ProcureCon in Boston in July.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm hoping I'll get to see you over there. I get to see you. Yeah. But you'd be busy during lockdown, because I have a book in my hand here called The Silent Killer of Your Company's Budget Software: How to Negotiate and Manage Your Software Portfolio Without Getting Taken Advantage of by Your Suppliers.
Fairly straightforward title. Yep.
I love it. No, I love it. It's absolutely brilliant. No, it's really, really good. I have a lot of questions for you, but I'd love to start with what made you decide to write a book?
Well, I've avoided doing the conferences as far as talks. I said no for a lot of years and doing all that kind of stuff. And I finally just got so sick and tired of how unfair the playing field was. And the contracts were and things like that. And I knew I had to do something. So, I started doing the conferences and the talks and trying to spread the word. And, we're one team here. I mean, we all work for different companies, but we've got to unify on how to combat this problem we've got with our suppliers in the technology area. COVID hit, so we couldn't do any more talks. We couldn't do any more sharing of information and things like that. So on a bet with my wife, I decided to write a book, because she's writing a book as well. And I said, I could write a book in a weekend.
Oh.
And that was a Friday around noon. She canceled all the plans we had that weekend and said, go. I bet you can. She won.
You took the bait. Bait, and you've written a fantastic book. And you're right. I mean, if you listen to any of these shows, we talk regularly about it is really David versus Goliath.
It is.
We as even though there are so many of us, whether it be at the on the buyer side, or when you're negotiating with these companies, their power is incredible. And you even look what's going on politically. Beginning of the show is some of the things happening in Europe, but we've many times talked about many of the actions that are happening, in particular in the last 12 to 18 months in the US. And even still, they're continuing to grow. They're becoming more and more powerful. There's starting to be a little bit of weakening of their power, mostly because they're fearful if they don't kind of move a little bit, they're gonna find themselves maybe getting much stronger regularly. They're gonna try to control the power of the regulation coming at them, aren't they?
Yep, absolutely. But I want to back you up for just a second to your favorite supplier.
Please do.
I want to tell you how this unfairness got started and where it kind of was created. Back in the 1920s, the history of organized sales was created by Ford with the science of selling. That was the first organized sales methodology. Now, you guys are not going to be a target, right? The science of selling, is the way Ford predicted it or said, was they wanted to focus on people that had a bigger forehead, because those people are smarter and could absorb information better than people with a bunch of hair like you two. So you would not be a target of them. But almost identically at the same time, IBM created FUD, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Yeah.
And they told everybody, you'll never get fired for buying IBM, right? Then they kept working all these things and whatnot. 1955, the first software company, the Computer Usage Company, CUC, was founded. And then who jumped in the software game right after that? IBM. I mean, they're always at the leading edge of causing problems for us. It's amazing. But it's just totally unfair. It's just spiraled from that point.
And the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, you've seen it in action, I'm sure,
Absolutely.
many times.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, what's the most outlandish fear or uncertainty or doubt that you've ever had thrown at you? I'm not throwing a question at you. Can you think of anything that they threw at you that was like, what are you serious?
Well, I think a lot of the changes that they've made to increase revenue through the years is just absolutely obscene, right? I mean, back in the day when you license things on a server, right? You bought so many licenses for your servers. Well, then the servers, because of the Moore's law.
Moore's law, yeah.
Yep. Made machines faster and faster and faster, and they can handle more cores and more chips and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Just because you got more efficiency out of the software you already bought, they wanted to charge you for that. So they redid their licensing. You're not gaining anything from them. You still got the same dang licenses, but they're going to charge you more because you gain more efficiency from their licenses.
Yeah. I was explaining this to someone last night, actually, about the monthly license charge, this kind of concept on the mainframe and all that all the mainframe vendors use. And, and it's about, keeping the machines running at a certain. So if you go to this, whatever this peak is, you pay at that peak, even if it's just momentarily. You've hit this peak, and everything goes up to this peak. So somebody else then sells you software that kind of flattens the peak, And it's really the software is doing nothing new. There's nothing. All that's happening is that you're driving a little bit more out of it. And there's this curve. It's Moore's law in the opposite direction.
Right. Well, yeah. And and I talk about it in the book, what's really unfair when they want to charge you for your efficiencies, but they won't share in the efficiencies that they're gaining from using your data, your, portfolio, and all of the benefits that they get from having customers using their licenses, right? They're gaining knowledge, they're getting better, they're getting faster, et cetera, et cetera. And if they're doing their job right, if they've got good sourcing people, their costs should be going down 8 to 12% a year.
Well, it's data. Yeah. Right. I mean, it's the same reasons the big tech companies now are being targeted, that they've got even better at monetizing data. In the old days, the likes of IBM monetized data through their engagement with customers like your company and many others around the world, where they went in and learned everything and then sold it on to the next guy. And the prices only went, that's amazing. You talk about this in your book, though, that the unit prices of technology have been coming down for years. You talk about Moore's law there. It's a classic example of that. Yet the overall spend has gone through the roof.
Yep.
Yes, okay, we accept we're all using more technology, and the whole lockdown kind of drove that. But what is there no end in this? Because there are challenges. Like one of the things that we sponsor here within Origin is around IT sustainability, that we're actually running out of just things on this planet to put into technology. I mean, at the moment, I don't know if you know this, they're mining landfills in parts of the world, in the US and other parts of the world. They're actually going into landfills things were thrown away 20 years ago to look for raw materials. Uh-huh. Because they've run out of things to take out of the ground. So we're eventually we have to some stage, this throwaway culture has to stop.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely.
You talk about this in your book about the fact that is there an explanation to it? Is it just greed?
Yeah, and I guess the shutdown, the pandemic. I think one of the things that I had hoped would have come from that is the fact they spend 50% of their budget on marketing and travel and sales and blah, blah, blah. They didn't have those expenses. $300 million on a naming rights for a stadium, right? But they didn't have near the expenses. Now, that's just pure profit for those guys. I mean, that's just crazy.
Yeah. And they're vanity projects. They're vanity projects, Yep. You talk about in your book about software. This is a quote you have. I love this one. Software salespeople are like highly trained, well-paid hit men and women, meaning when they infiltrate your organization, your budget will take a hit. And then,
and it does. Yeah. I mean, so I'm a student of the game. I study as much of the sales side as I do the sourcing side of things, right? Because I really want to understand what's going on and what they're doing. And it's kind of fun when you're in a negotiation and you see them doing certain tactics. I even call them out on it once in a while. But the Jim Camp wrote a book called Start With No, right? Yeah. In that book, it's a good book. In that book, it's very sales focused. He tells you at least 2 times, maybe 3, avoid the sourcing group. Avoid at all costs dealing with procurement.
Stay away from you.
Stay away from me.
Okay.
Go to the budget owners, go to the executives, go to the people, get the deal done as much as possible there. Then just have them slide that piece of paper across the table or over the wall and get signatures and POs. They're trained to, say no. They're trained to not give in any situation. That's the frontline sales guys, right? They don't have any authority over any pricing, over any terms and conditions or anything like that. Their job is the front line is just to say no and get as much as possible for the company. I get that. That's the revenue. That's their stream of revenue. Every company needs revenue.
And how do you then figure out how do you stop that? I mean, a company of the size of the company that you worked for and where you work now, they're enormous companies. Of course, you're going to have business executives and stakeholders interested in things that are going on out there that might make their life better.
Yep.
But how do you educate them and say, listen, it's not a good idea to start to negotiate. Yes, look at what you might want to buy, and then let's then sit down together. How do you get because that to me is the perfect scenario where, yes, let them look at what's out there. Of course, they have to know what's right for their business, for what they're trying to do. But at a certain point in time, then they need to say, right, that's when they stop. That's when they bring in the professionals to look at what they've discussed. Are there any other alternatives that they may have missed? Because they don't have time to look at everything. How do you get them to that point?
Yeah, it's trust. It's having some wins, right? It's I've got a little cheat sheet of things you never say to a vendor. I send that frequently to executives and IT people and internal business customers, and they start to get the picture, right? Don't tell them your budget, obviously. Don't tell them your timeline. Timeline is just as critical a piece of information as their budget is almost, right? Because they know that they can back you into a corner then. Don't believe you have to sign the deal this month or you'll never see it again. It's all those things, but they're going to do whatever they can do to get and extract as much information as possible before they deal with somebody like me. And they don't ask a question by accident. They're very well trained to ask specific questions to extract information.
Yeah. I would imagine you work, see your careers, a lot of it's been in the retail industry. Retail organizations are very good culturally at training their people to trust the procurement process. That's our experience. And I'm comparing it to other industries. That's our experience because they know the margins are so tight.
Yep.
They across many parts. I'm not just talking technology, across the whole business line. They have to be good negotiators. So I'm thinking you mentioned the trust with you and your stakeholders. Mm-hmm. The business needs to provide trust in its procurement arm, doesn't it?
Right.
Like if the business sets up a procurement arm that's really just because we have to have one, for example.
Yep.
And really, it's set up to fail, isn't it?
Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah. And it's having those small wins. It's showing them that price is not the only factor, especially in the technology, right? The technology companies will do anything they can to get into your company. The initial price, and this is where there's a little bit of conflict in a battle, right? Because the project managers of a software project, they care about their price. They care about the budget. They've got a restrictive budget. They've got restrictive time frame, only so much they can do for implementation costs, et cetera. The software company will meet that regardless of what that number is. Oh, yeah. They just want to get in there, get sticky, and then they will start growing that revenue stream by adding, like you guys talked about earlier, adding new products, coming up with new licensing models for the same thing. And it's hard to displace. I mean, the cost, now that we're getting away from perpetual licenses where you used to be able to cancel maintenance and then implement something new or as a replacement, you can't do that anymore with SaaS, right? Now you're playing for two solutions while you do your implementation. But they know how to get sticky and they know how to then start working those networks. And the more they get in and the more conversations they have, the stickier they will be.
And what are your tips and tricks? You talk about some of them in the book. You might just tell our audience about some of them. You talk about good questions and being flexible in the process. Can you give us some insight as to if you were to give somebody the 101?
Well, that's what the book was intended to be. It's to help as many people as possible, right? That's the key, because there's a lot of companies that can't afford a sourcing group dedicated to IT or specifically software. Yeah, the best sourcing people, I've said for years, ask the best questions, right? Well, guess what? That's all the sales training says the same thing. Ask the best questions. You need to understand what success looks like from your customer's point of view. your internal customer. What do they really need out of this? And then when you're talking with the supplier, ask great questions and shut up. I mean, salesmen love to talk. Now they're trained to ask good questions and listen, but when you start turning the table on them, they can't be quiet.
Yeah.
They can't. And they will start telling you things. And as long as you can stay quiet, you will get some of the things that your business wants for success in that project. You'll get more than what you think you could get, because they will tell you, why is this project important to them? And I will ask. I mean, I've been doing this far too long. I'll ask them, how are they compensated? When's their, how close are they to their new house or vacation home, or what trip, what award will they win if they get, certain things and stuff like that. I have no problem. All they can say is no.
Yeah. Very clever, actually. It's good, because you're asking personal questions, and it disarms them.
Yep.
They tell you that if they open up the kimono there, it's very hard to close down. And suddenly now you've shifted some of the power back to you.
Mm-hmm.
We're being taught the same skills, Brad.
Yeah.
Like the sales teams and your teams. Like I've been doing sales a long time, and one of the things that I learned very early on was shut the hell up. Stop talking. Ask open questions and then stop talking. And then when the customer stops talking, ask another open question until you get what you need.
Right.
That was my base training.
Yep.
So neither party talks then. It's like a finished negotiation.
Well, no, that's the thing. So silence to some people can't bear silence, right? So I'd say Brad and myself have both now been trained in, don't worry about silence, because, by the time it gets to the 2 minutes, it feels like a really long time. And one of you is going to crack.
Yeah.
And I know it's probably going to be me. But if you can get to 2 minutes and the other guy cracks, you've just won that. You've just, advanced forward on the chessboard, right? So.
Yep, absolutely. And the problem from the procurement side of the house is all of our training historically has been on processes, understanding your category, doing market analysis and research and benchmarking. Super. You need to have that level of knowledge and understanding to a certain point. But if you can make it personal and you can find out what your opponent, if you will, wants out of the deal, needs out of the deal, and what success looks like internally, I don't care if you understand the 7-step sourcing process.
Right. Yeah. That's
but I think that's on. But I think that you'd end up with a pretty fair outcome if both sides said, "Hey, look, what do you want? Here's what I want." Because I'm actually like you. I go into customers and say, "Well, here's what I want. Here's my needs, and so you tell me yours, and I'll tell you mine, and then we'll both get. You'll probably get a good outcome for everybody. Everybody be happy. But if I'm just looking for what I want and I don't care what you want, then one of us is going to be bitter, right?"
Yep.
So I think you can get a fair outcome by everybody getting most of their needs satisfied. That's how I approach sales, right? So when we're, doing the deal with you, Brad, you'll know what's coming, right? But
But you know what? If you deal with somebody that's a true professional and they understand that, I have shut this negotiations down early and said, you know what you're doing? I know what I'm doing. What do you need out of the deal?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I need. You tell me what you need.
Yeah. And you can also decide whether it's walk away, just forget about it. We can't do anything. Yeah. And that's good for everybody. Nobody wastes any more time. Yeah, no, it's good. Can I ask you a couple of questions? You talk about something that's dear to our heart, renewals. We're in the IBM software maintenance business. So you talk about in your book, you state that renewal section of the contract is an area the supplier does not want you paying attention to. It's funny. We totally agree with you there, by the way. But it is your best opportunity to manage your long-term costs, isn't it?
Oh, no, it's, yeah. Yeah, that's the key.
We even saying earlier, just to finish, like we talked earlier about Microsoft, 15%, the renewal of the 1st of March there, a 15% increase. If someone asked a really good question a couple of years earlier, they might have found out that maybe the costs could be put up by up to 15% or more. So now whether anyone would have been able to deal with that, who knows? But at least if they'd asked a good question, what's your advice? So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so I'm going to back up just a smidge. cost savings is what sales or procurement people that's their blood, that's their livelihood, right? And I have fought that battle for years and years and years. Avoidance, and what you're talking about is avoidance in our categories, is the most important thing. You're protecting the long-term value of those contracts and your company when you care more about what that initial price is, like we talked about earlier, because they're going to do whatever they can to get in there and get sticky. They will give you a 95% discount or whatever the case may be to get in, because they know if you don't pay attention to the contract, if you don't have somebody really good at understanding the T's and C's, that they'll increase your price 8%, 10%, 7%, whatever, year over year. They know that they'll be able to add new solutions because they're going to get to talk to these people more and more because their solution's embedded in there. They'll change the licensing model like we talked about, right? They will continue to increase revenue year over year for as long as they're in there. I guarantee it. And they all have quotas to get. I mean, they meet early in the year in their fiscal years to determine how much more revenue they're going to extract from that company that they're responsible for calling on.
Yeah, it's brutal, actually. It's quite brutal, really, isn't it? I mean, it is. I mean, the reason we set up the company originally was to focus and try and help people change some of that mindset. And it is, like you say, when these contracts, the fact that they so regularly change the terms and conditions, whether it's changes to the license agreements or it's changes to the support contract, it is, in many cases, nothing new. There's nothing, they haven't given you anything new. And in fact, increasingly, there's a zero new, and yet they're still trying to extract more revenue.
Yeah. And the thing that you have to watch out for, and I don't see it as much as I used to, but I still see it once in a while, is if you make this up, you bought 100 license of XYZ company solution, then you go add 20 more to a different group or a different this or a different that, put it on an SOW addendum amendment. I don't care what you call it. I have seen them change master terms and conditions on an SOW, on an amendment, on an addendum. When you're just order doc, when you're just adding something new, they need to get something new that added to the master agreement, or they need to change the T's and C's of a master agreement. That's just sneaky. That's not good business. And but it used to happen a lot more. Yeah. But it doesn't. But it does still happen.
Yeah, well, we haven't seen it for a while, but they used to change the hot links. They used to have these hot links back to something on a website that then suddenly disappeared, wasn't available there anymore, or was replaced by something else. And then there was nobody was properly informed. There might have been a kind of small announcement up on a web page, but nothing was proactively informed. And that's all, they've been doing it for years. And again, I mean, that's the sort of behavior we absolutely detest. I'll be quite honest with you. It's totally wrong.
Right. Yep. Totally agree. And they are gaining knowledge from all your data, all your information, all your transactions, transmissions, and they should be getting more and more efficient as time goes on, right? I mean, pretty much everybody understands Lean Six Sigma methodologies, right?
Yeah.
They should be getting better and more efficient, and they should be sharing those things with you instead of charging you more. If they sell you, and the profit margins on SaaS are ridiculous. I mean, it's insane how much money they're making. But every year they're increasing that margin because they get more efficient and you pay more.
Yeah. Yeah. There's really no justification for some of these increases at all. Absolutely. Yeah. It can be depressing sometimes, but how do you, if we're going to have to wrap up the interview, and it's been fantastic chatting to you, but how do you bring humor into it though? You have to bring some fun to the game because it can be tough, can't it? How do you bring humor into the conversations, and do you use humor as a negotiating tactic?
Sure. Well, yes, with the sarcasm, the slice of sarcasm in a humorous way. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I make fun of them and how much they travel, and I make fun of them when they start changing their licenses and doing things like that. And just ask them open-ended questions like, how am I supposed to deal with that? I make, whatever your profit margin is in your business, nothing compared to theirs, and I tease them about buying their new boats or their new vacation homes and things like that. You have to. I mean, this is just way too one-sided, and obscene to not have some fun with it along the way.
Yeah. No, we have to have fun. Well, hopefully we're getting a bit more help these days, even since we last met you 2019, from legislators, and I think there's a lot more attention on them. I think the power is shifting in our favor, I hope. Fingers crossed. And you mentioned at the beginning, by the way, salespeople were told not to talk to procurement people. We love procurement conferences, so bring them on. Can't wait to see you, hopefully in Boston in July. Just before we wrap up, Brad, what's next for you? Have you got anything else coming down the traps? You're not going to be a one-term president, a one-time author. Are you going to give it a go again?
I am. I had so much fun writing that book, and the message has gotten out so quick. I'm thrilled with how well the book's doing. It's just created a lot of conversation and a lot of awareness, if you will. But I think there's a big void in the industry on some of those truly staple negotiation books. They're all written from a sales perspective. I've, again, studied all of them. I've got about 300 pages of notes from them. And I started taking a crack at writing a book to redefine it. If you're not in negotiations of hostage situation, and I'm not a professor at a university that makes a big deal out of saving $10 on the student who saved $10 on his bike, that he can ride to class. This is going to be real world, real examples of negotiations. And it's not going to be just technology. It's going to be just pure negotiations to try and offset some of the things that we've read and learned through the years.
Yeah. I think it'll be great. Yeah, I think it's about time someone wrote a book like that. So I'm looking forward to reading it. Make sure you let us know.
I'll have all my sales people read it.
Yeah.
So what's going on in your head.
Indeed. Brad Veech, thank you very much. Software, the silent killer of your company's budget. Love the book. Keep it up. Hopefully I'll see you in July. Thank you very much, Brad.
I appreciate it. Much success, guys.
Take care, Brad. See you.
Thank you. Wow, that was a great chat. What a guy. He knows his stuff. We all can learn a few things from Brad.
I'm going to look at those tips and tricks. I said that my own little one-pager.
I bet you are.
Laminated.
So yeah, that's it for another show.
Yeah, that was good. That went by pretty quickly.
Yeah, another show. And so thank you for coming.
No, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, and we will
keep inviting me and I'll always turn up.
Yeah, that's it. We always need a second Irish guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's great. Listen, we'll be back in a month's time. We'll have another guest and we'll have another conversations. Let's see where we're at. And thank you for everybody for listening. And see you all soon.
Over and out.
Bye-bye.